I did this work also with my colleague Ištvan, who is the co-author of the work and the presentation. Monitoring of white-tailed eagle is occurring, as we saw, almost everywhere, and we are all curious about its causes, statistical data about it, and what we can learn about the mortality and how we can adapt our conservation measures, and on the other hand, how we will go on with juridical procedures if this mortality is human-caused. In Serbia, this is the more or less new question that are raised in the last 10 to 15 years. And since then, data on mortality were gathered during the monitoring of nests of this species, and more recently, from the information that were received by the citizens, most of them being the landowners and the owners of the different structures in the land, mainly agricultural landscapes. Data that we will present here are gathered between 2008 and 2017, and also the effects to the breeding reproduction. And two cases that we will particularly show were actually produced or discovered in the last 4 years. Since 2013, we had a huge outbreaks, I would say, of carbofuran poisoning, and several questions were raised in these situations. Majority of data are originating from the province of Vojvodina, and that is the northern Serbian province, mainly situated in the southern part of Pannonian Plain. And it is a stronghold of white-tailed eagle population. We are now speaking about three causes of mortality. First is carbofuran poisoning, and statistical data were considered in this presentation only if it was confirmed after toxicological analysis, or if signs of carbofuran poisoning was very obvious and observed in carcasses. Then the second is the death of chick in the nest as a result of the death of at least one parent, and the third was electrocution. This is speaking about the mortality of the chicks in the nest. This is a geographical distribution of the nests in which we registered cases of poisoning at the nests and below the nests of adults. And in this period, actually, we analyzed the death of 44 death in 44 cases of human-induced mortality. Number of dead birds was 68 that were discovered, but in recent times, statistic is even worse. These 68 birds, the death of these birds was actually analyzed, most of them toxicologically. These are the locations in which these cases were discovered, and it is almost completely, locations are almost completely overlapping with the stronghold of the population, and it is, these are the floodplain forests along three main big rivers in the Vojvodina province, and these are Danube, Tisa, and Sava rivers. A little bit more about carbofuran poisoning. We have obviously very strong motivation of carbofuran poisoning of mainly predators, and out of these predators on the first place is golden jackal, and the second place is red fox. Why predators are being killed, poisoned? Mainly because of the information received by hunters and transferred to the general population. These voices are louder and louder, and they are based on what hunters can observe in the field regarding the population and actually dwelling of these two species. So most of their sentences and statements are going in this direction. There is a huge increase of the population of golden jackal in Serbia. Red foxes are killing our animals. They will destroy all of our herds. Golden jackals are threatening our herds and eating sheep. And this motivation is becoming obviously very strong. Simultaneously, carbofuran, although it is banned in Serbia in 2013 finally, is still available in the market, and there are still a lot of quantities stored, and it can be very easily actually used in cases like this. There are various poisoning sites, mainly most of them are in the area which are on the open landscape. This is the picture where hunters are bringing the leftovers of the dead animals, and actually most of them are the places where they are putting the poisoning baits. And these two are the places of actually the areas where the sheep keepers, and most of them have really large herds of several hundred individuals, are coming with their animals to rest and to spend the night. We faced with some of them, and they are stating that the red foxes and jackals are following their herds, so they are leaving lambs like this. And this one was on a tree, but on this location we found several lambs poisoned with carbofuran, and the next day a huge massive poisoning of mainly ravens and red foxes, buto, so buzzards, but among them also one white-tailed eagle. And this is the case of which happened recently in when the domestic duck was poisoned close to the farm. So agricultural areas, farms, not far away from the human settlements. This is one of the drastic cases. Apparently, carcasses are very visible, and as soon as the poisoners found out that most of these cases are very frequently inspected and legally examined, they tried to destroy one of the carcasses by burning them. So this is what left out of this burning. One of the illustrations of what is going on in media. So there are many of this article. The title of this article is actually "Jackals are approaching to the town and the isolated farms," meaning that someone should solve this situation. Solution is almost always poisoning. In regards to that, we can actually distinguish two motivations. So it is intentional or unintentional poisoning. Intentional poisoning aims to kill these two mammal species mainly, but we all know that especially in the period when the food is lacking, these are very good food sources also for white-tailed eagles. And most of the cases of poisoning have happened in this cold period of year, and that is between November and March, where naturally food is lacking. So despite the reports from the media, we can actually read also the scientific evidences that especially golden jackal is opportunistic mammal species that eats what is available, and most of them most of the food sources analyzed from the stomach contents of dead animals have proven that they are feeding on the dump sites by what they can find on the dump sites. The voices, actually, the media reports that are pointing out the bad reputation of the jackal and the danger that that animal possesses to the domestic animals and even to the people are much stronger. What were the effects of the poisoning? First of all, most of the effects were spotted during the monitoring of the nests. And on the places of poisoning, there were cases of unsuccessful breeding that lasted from 1 to 4 years. We have analyzed 18 cases, and in average period of abandonment of the nest was 2.2 years. That doesn't mean that we proved that the reason for abandonment of the nest was always carbofuran poisoning, but as you will see, carbofuran poisoning happened in the very close vicinity of the nests and with the victims that were adult white-tailed eagles. In one case, we had a case that, despite the fact that the carcass was of adult male, presumably poisoned, was found below the nest. Female of that pair has successfully raised one juvenile. this is one of the cases that I would like to show. So close to the border with the Croatia, there was a poisoning site in 2014 in early spring, where in the period of 1 month we discovered totally 11 white-tailed eagles poisoned in the area which was immediately around the poisoning site, but also a little bit far away. I'm speaking about the cases of where poisoning was proven by the toxicological analysis of carcasses. In that breeding season, we had 8 pairs that were failed. We had failed clutch, and these are the empty cycles. Also, there were several cases of breeding that were successful, but also there was one case where poisoned white-tailed eagle was found below the nest, and I explained that a little bit earlier. So in a relatively near vicinity of poisoning site, we had a significant amount of nest with failed clutch. So that means either adults or chicks were found poisoned. Unfortunately, we don't know if there was cases of poisoning animals in the Croatia, which is here. This is a Kopački Rit, which is also populated with a strong population of white-tailed eagle. But it can be that it was actually an international poisoning. This was the case with the most of where the biggest number of poisoned birds was found at a single location. This is a similar case on the River Sava, where 3 white-tailed eagles were poisoned between December 2015 and January 2016, with 4 out of 6 nearby nests being abandoned in that breeding season. I repeat, among the poisoned birds, there were adult individuals. What was done to prevent and mitigate effects of poisoning? A lot of things, but obviously none of them were completely successful, although I can now state, after the experience that we have, that combination of different activities and different effects aimed to prevent and mitigate poison was proven to be at least a little bit successful. So first of all, we have a more or less active network of 7 feeding sites where raptors and other animals, most of them birds, are being fed by the dead animals and their remnants during the cold period of year. These feeding sites were proven to be very needed and very successful because by offering fresh and healthy meat, dead meat to white-tailed eagles, you will attract them to these sites and actually disattract them from searching potentially poisoned carcasses all around in the much wider areas. Alongside to that, we had 2 public campaigns that were aimed to spread the knowledge about the huge problem of carbofuran poisoning, and also opened a so-called red line for collection of complaints and records of eventually found dead birds that is still active. Several cases where carbofuran poisoning was offered even publicly on internet were reported to police, and fortunately we had very fast reaction of police in one of them, and this person is already sentenced. So I must once again stress that internet trade of carbofuran is very, very much widespread, and almost everybody can buy it, although officially there is no a single bottle on the market. Civil society sector also undertake a lot of activities. This was one of the performances that they organized in the city center of Novi Sad, where they covered themselves with these sheets and put the poisoned corn seeds in order to show how the poison carbofuran looks like and what can be the effects of that activities. And also there are 2 complaints, even 3 at the moment, of the civil society to the Secretariat of Berne Convention, where the Republic of Serbia was directly accused for being responsible for poisoning of white-tailed eagle and other predator species. Both of them are still active, so they are not. These cases are not finished. Berne Convention has a mechanism to explore the situation and finally to give the recommendations to the country. Hopefully, these recommendations will be successful. Up to now, although Berne Convention is considered as a weak conservation convention, it has proven to be very strong in terms of the influence to the politicians and the state authorities. Thank you very much for your attention. I tried to show myself as unexperienced young individual and my colleague Ištvan as very experienced in terms of the conservation of white-tailed eagles, which is completely true, of course.
Very good presentation. Thank you. So, a couple of questions. Do we have?
Thank you for this nice presentation. I have a question regarding your proven cases of carbofuran poisoning. It's clear when the toxicological lab has proven that case, but you also mentioned cases where you have strong indications for carbofuran poisoning. What are your strong indications or signs?
During the veterinary inspection on the field, there were signs of carbofuran poisoning. One of them was the constriction of the claws, and several of them were visual symptoms of the poisoning that were actually recognized as such by veterinarian and veterinarian institution. In some of these cases, for various reasons, the toxicological analysis didn't took place up to now, but we have at least temporarily strong indication of the poisoning on the basis of visual identification of these symptoms, not by conservationists, but by veterinarians.